Ivory Coast, Cameroon. I'm forgetting some, but in any case, my focus over the last last month or so, has been in communication with churches and church leaders and with schools and school administrations about the projects that Sunset is trying to put together that will benefit them in training gospel preachers. And then, of course, it was around 2.5 weeks ago that I left for Nigeria and arrived in Lagos, Nigeria. And what I want to present to you today is somewhat of a report. You're my guinea pigs in that you're getting the first shot at me making a report on this. But in any case, I've put together this report, literally did it sitting in an airport in multiple airports and sitting in hotel rooms over the last 36, 48 hours, putting all these pictures together. I gathered literally several hundred pictures and narrowed it down to where I could present this to you in 45 minutes or so. And so I guess I'll just go ahead and launch into this. We flew out of DFW, and I arrived after a stopover in Paris, I arrived in Lagos, Nigeria. Lagos, Nigeria is a town of 20 million. Let me set the context for that. It's bigger than New York, bigger than Miami, bigger than DFW, bigger than LA. It is a huge city. It's the 5th largest city in the world. And it is a vast contrast of both poverty as well as civilization. It is, in fact, a massive city. There are hundreds of churches of Christ in Lagos. There are 6,000 churches of Christ in Nigeria. To get you the context for that, there are only 12,000 in all of America. And this is Nigeria alone that I'm speaking of. The church is vastly great and large and growing in numbers that are phenomenal. Some of the numbers I'll share with you I did not know before I began preparing for this trip. One of the things you need to know is that I traveled through a lot of dangerous territory in which there was a combination of both the dangers of the jungle when I was traveling from one city to the other. Even though these cities may have been very, very large cities that I went to, the parts that were in between were pretty remote. And I would spend 8 or so hours in some of these drives going down roads in the middle of nowhere, and suddenly there would be a military guard or a state police roadblock, or in some cases just concerned citizens roadblocks, where they would stop vehicles and ask them for ID and things like that. But it just so happened that this guy right here is named Prince Ugby. Prince Ugby is of noble character there. He is the director of one of the best and biggest schools that are in Nigeria. More importantly, though, he is a state justice of the peace and a state police officer, a commander with that, and with that wields all kinds of authority. So when we came to these roadblocks, the reason for this picture right here is to show you, right up here on the dashboard, well, this isn't a good picture of it, but in any case, he had a whip. And along with that, he had, here it is, this is a good picture. That, by the way, is a bunch of bananas. That truck is way overloaded. But anyways, this picture right here is to show you that right there. It is a leather whip that is about that long, and if anybody gave us any guff at all, he would pick that whip up and he'd slap them with it. And this stuff right here, there's his banner that he wears on his chest. He wears that as well. And that right there is his identity as being a state police official. And so they would let us through these roadblocks as we traveled and through the cities that we went to. The first place that we went to was in a place called Akadusin. Akadusin is famous for a couple of things. One, it has one of the largest churches in Nigeria. Secondly, it is the oldest church in Nigeria. And thirdly, it has one of the largest schools of preaching, one of the largest colleges for training preachers in Nigeria. In fact, it even says it on the sign, the first congregation established in Nigeria and all of West Africa. And that's the building right there. This guy right here is the fellow I was telling you about, that's Prince Ugby, that he traveled with us throughout the entire time I was there. He was with us. I literally arrived at that church just in time for a big convention that they had scheduled me to speak at. And I got there to an audience of somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 people. The auditorium would hold well over 1,000, but there were that many more outside listening through the windows because, as this picture indicates, there are no windows. That's not an uncommon thing, even for the fanciest structures there. No air conditioning. But that was their air conditioning system right there, no windows. In fact, this particular church didn't have doors. The bamboo you see, by the way, is because they're in the process of doing some renovations on the building. So that's what that was about. But anyways, I spoke to an audience there, over 1,000. I don't know if you can see the balconies there, but there's as many people up in the balconies all the way around the auditorium as there are on the floor of the auditorium. There I met up with Emmanuel Essien, who is the director of the CAO Essien Bible College, and that college is also one of the larger schools in all of Nigeria, and spent considerable time with Emmanuel Essien. But this church right here is the church that also supplies, or is the church associated with the school, the college that is there, and I'll show you some of that in a minute. This is where I stayed at. This is on the campus of that CAO Essien College, and that right there was my dormitory. It's actually a nurse's quarters for the hospital that's literally right across from where I'm standing. But I'm showing you this picture primarily to show you this right here. That right there was my bedroom, and you'll notice there's a net over that. Do you know why they put a net over your bed in the bedroom? You don't die. Yeah, that's one of the big reasons. Yeah, it's kind of one of the most important reasons. There are some really bad bugs in Nigeria and much of West Africa. But in any case, bugs like centipedes that are Nigerian centipedes, and I killed 2 of them in my room during the time that I was there on 2 different occasions. And I'd ask Prince, if I keep referring to Prince, it's that first guy I told you about, okay, our guide. I asked him about the Nigerian centipedes and whether or not they were harmful enough to put you in the hospital. He said, oh yeah, a child it would kill and it'd put you in the hospital if it bit you. That's a little different than the centipedes here. It's not much more than a bee sting here if you get bit by one. Oh, I was also going to tell you about some of the other bugs. I also killed a scorpion, a Nigerian scorpion. Scorpions here, you get stung by it, and it's a real bad bee sting. Scorpions there, sting a child, they're dead. Sting an adult, you're in the hospital. So that's among them. But probably the biggest thing this net was to protect me from was mosquitoes. You get bit by a mosquito here, you slap it, and you go on with your day. You get bit by one there, good chance you've got malaria. And so they have these nets over beds, especially for foreigners, but even the local people, to protect them from the bugs. This is on the campus of the college. This is the kitchen, believe it or not. It's outdoor. That's an open kitchen. This is a picture closer up of it. They're standing there, and they're cooking for a huge entourage for the graduation and celebration that's going to occur tomorrow after this moment. This, by the way, is some of the food I ate. I'll make note of the fact that some of you said I look a little bit thinner now. Yes, I have lost between 12 and 15 pounds over the last 3 weeks. You do that on a diet of goat intestines and goat lungs and goat snout, and any part of the goat, they cook it. The thing I didn't eat any of was any goat steak. I didn't. They never prepared chicken breasts. It was always chunks of chicken that you'd never recognize. You know, it was like necks and backs and things like that, and it would be in a soup type format. And so I would eat some of the broth maybe. This on the right here is made out of a thing called catava. I'll show you more of that. But catava is one of the mainstays of their diet. It's kind of like potatoes here. But in any case, it's not potatoes. It's the root of a small tree that they grow on their plantation. So I'll tell you more about that later. But this is just them cooking and preparing. That's a structure that they're building. That's going to be a library, a print room, as well as a sewing center. And I'll tell you more about that as well. Sewing like a sewing machine, like making stuff like this. So in any case, these are some of the dignitaries from that college. This was the ceremony of them. What do you call it when you're marching in? When you're marching into the graduation. Somebody help me with that. The commencement march. This is it right here. And I'm somewhere around here, I think. That right there is the classrooms of this particular campus. This was their 25th anniversary of the school, and this is their 10th graduation as a part of Sunset Bible International. What's gone on is that Sunset, in some cases, started schools over there. In other cases, Sunset, the school already existed. That was the case here. School already existed, and they wanted to have more credentials. They wanted to be able to offer a bachelor's degree. They wanted to be able to train their men with better curriculum. And so they associated with Sunset. Sunset provides them with the curriculum and training they need to have their teaching at the level that Sunset is. And so this is their 10th graduating class of having been in that relationship. This guy right here is Dan Goodyear. He is now my mentor. He is wanting to retire. He's about 78 years old. He's wanting to retire. He's been doing this for 25 years. He started that school 25 years ago, he and a couple other guys. In any case, he's wanting to retire. Sunset has asked me to join the faculty and staff there to do the things I'm going to be doing to replace him ultimately. On this trip, I was being mentored by him. That is a building plaque. They're naming this building on campus. It's one of the classroom wings. They're naming it the Dan Goodyear wing, that building, that whole building. This guy right here is the president of the school, and this is just Dan getting his award. That again is that Prince Ugby I was telling you about. They gave him an award for what he's doing in Nigeria. This was the commencement ceremonies at which I spoke. The guy that's standing right there is the boss of my boss. This guy is the director of international studies with Sunset International Bible Institute. He was there with us in this trip, and I was among those that were handing out the diplomas and awarding the bachelor's degrees to these students that were right there. I preached the next day at the church there in Icodison, and there were probably around 750 at worship that morning. As I mentioned, the first night I was there, that was a special convention. There were people from all over the region that had walked or driven for huge numbers of miles. Well, this right here is just Sunday morning with the church. There's about 750 present. And this right here, though you can't hardly see it, is me preaching with an interpreter, which I had for over half the messages I delivered. I had an interpreter. This is a fellow being baptized. We had responses. Oh, I didn't tell you this. The first night I got there in that convention, that was the huge crowd, there were 28 people who came forward to be baptized that night after I got done preaching. So it was kind of an awesome moment. I took the confessions of 28 people, and I'm thinking, Brenda, I don't think I've ever done that before. Had 28 people standing up at the front, and I was going to each one of them with a microphone and asking them, do you believe that Jesus Christ is the risen Son of God? And they would say yes. Well, they gave me their name first, but I can't tell you all their names. But anyway, so this was a response during that worship service, and we baptized him in that baptistry. The director of the school lives in that house, and the one meal out of the whole time I was there that I just simply straight up could not eat is this one. By the way, these guys right here are dignitaries, some of them state officials that are there at the campus visiting because of the fact that I and the entourage I was with were there. But this food I was telling you about, this right here that kind of looks like mushed up spinach, smelled and tasted like cow manure. And I could not get it. I took one bite and I choked it down and said, this is it. I can't, no, I draw the line here. This is it. I'm not eating that. And I was in a room full of dignitaries and I just did not eat it. This, on the other hand, was rice, and I ate the rice. So anyways, we made our way to Calabar after this. Had to meet with a school there, and I'll tell you more about that school, but it's in the Cross River State. Calabar is a city of about 500,000. It's a large, large city with hundreds of churches of Christ in it. This, by the way, is one of the major modes of transportation, motorcycles, and that thing right there is a 3-wheeled taxi cab. You and 2 other people fit in that thing, and there are hundreds of those, and you haven't seen it yet. You will see it. This is just a big circle right here, a circle drive. That right there says Calabar. I don't think you can see. Oh, this was right here, typical housing. You'd be in the middle of a sophisticated city, and that would be the housing right there. So we made our way from Calabar to a place called Abudu. And on our way, we saw women. They were on their way to the laundry. I wish that picture was better to be seen, but you can tell what they're doing, right? They're carrying something. How are they carrying it? Ladies, if your arms ever get tired carrying the clothes to the laundry room, just go ahead and put them on your head. That's what they do there. Only they walk miles like this. And sometimes this lady right here is actually carrying a bundle of wood on top of her head. But we are right now standing in what is a farm. And it's in the jungle. And yet they grow things like catawba and yams. Not yams like us. It is a root vegetable like potatoes or yams are here. But these yams are about this big. And they are the main staple, one of the main staples of their food, and catawba. And that right there is growing catawba. All of their farm stuff grows in either trees or large bushes. And they don't try and cut away the underbrush. They don't do the weed eating in their gardens, so to speak. Ranchers and farmers here will spend a lot of effort and a lot of money on killing out vegetation that's trying to choke out their crops of peas or beans or whatever it is they're growing. They do not. They let the jungle grow. And so the whole time I'm walking through this jungle area, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? You know what this would be a good place for to find a lot of? Snakes. Yeah. I'm thinking that the whole time. For hours we're walking through this jungle, and he's telling us about all these cocoa plants and catawba and everything. I got back to the pickup, or to the van, I mean, and I asked Ugby, that's the guy right there. I asked him, I said, so what kind of snakes you got around here, Prince? And he said, well, it's, let me see, there's green mambas. Green mamba is the most deadly snake on the planet, and cobras. And it was enough from there. He named some other snakes, but I don't remember what the other ones were. Once he got past those two, I was like, yeah, I thought I was going to die. And you know what? He waited until after I got out of there to tell me that. So anyways, but this farm has a significance to it in that the school is feeding its students off of this farm right here. This is one of the major ways in which they are self-sustaining and supporting their students is off of this farm. That's a banana tree that you can't see. By the way, that is the reason why I told everybody that was back there, you're not going to be able to see this PowerPoint from back there. I'm sorry I didn't say it again. That's the reason why all these people are up here. I told everybody to move to the front. But anyways, so that's a banana tree. Those are catawba, and that's yam behind us here, and that's just my pretty face. One of the ways in which the school is trying to sustain itself is Sunset has purchased sewing machines for the schools. And they are sewing. They're able to make clothing and various things and then sell them in the marketplace. And from that, they can support the school as well as the students. And that is really the centerpiece of what I'm all about. It's already going on there to some degree that they are trying to be self-sustaining. But what has happened over the last 150 years, we've been sending missionaries to Nigeria. That's not a new thing. Initially, we sent missionaries to Nigeria to go into the villages and try and convert people to Jesus. Well, they were fairly successful at that, but one of the things that happened was those missionaries would come back home, and there'd be nobody trained to carry on the work. So then about 25 years ago, our brethren got the brilliant idea, we should be setting up schools of preaching over there and training those people how to preach. And then they can preach to their own people. And that's been going on for a couple decades. But we're going to see some graduating classes here that have 25 or 30 graduates receiving their bachelor's degree. And half of them would go into congregations. The other half not ever make it to a congregation because they had to have some means of support, and there wasn't enough money coming from anywhere to pay for their salaries. And so half of them would get to a church, but that church couldn't afford to pay for them. Here in America, most congregations, let's say for a congregation of 250, a congregation here in America of 250 probably has a contribution of between 3,000 and 5,000. We are an unusual church, that we are of around 130 or so, and have this kind of contribution. But typically in America, a church of 250 would have a contribution of 3,000 to 5,000. In Nigeria, that same congregation have a contribution of $300 to $500. And so there wasn't enough money to keep the lights on, let alone to feed the preacher. And so that's going on in commonplace there among these thousands of churches I told you they're there. So what they're having to do is train preachers on how to make a living outside of it, to be bivocational ministers. And so that's what this sewing shop is all about. Quite literally, though, what you're looking at in this particular picture is that outfit you see that guy sewing on right now, I'm wearing. They made this for me in a 24-hour period, staying up all night long. They stayed up all night to make this outfit that I'm now wearing, which is, if I didn't mention earlier, this is typical church clothes right here. And some of the stuff you're seeing here, everybody's got suits on, but that's because it was graduations. And the graduations, they were wearing suits and other things. This lady right here, she's making this outfit right here, and that's what Brenda's wearing right now, is a typical lady's dress that she would go to church in. And in fact, dear, did you bring your hat? You decided not to bring that hat. Did you really? Oh, well. It is the most flamboyant bowed hat that wraps around your head and has a bow about this big on the side of it. But in any case, so they made that outfit. They made that outfit for Brenda, and they made this outfit for me. Oh, and something significant. The hat I'm wearing, they didn't make this. Well, somebody obviously handmade this, but they didn't make it right there in that picture. But this hat, the color striping on this represents all the tribes of Nigeria are on this hat. Each of these sets of colors represent a particular tribe in Nigeria. And this, I'll take this off now. In any case, and this outfit right here, this part, they gave to me is something that people of nobility wear this. It's supposed to be a sign of honor. People are supposed to bow to you if you're wearing this kind of an outfit with one of these on it. And so in any case, well, this is them doing the sewing thing. Something else the school is doing to help support the students in the school, which we're also going to train the students to do, is they make bricks. That's what this guy is doing right now. This picture right here is of a guy who's pulling down on a single steel arm that is pressing a brick out in this right here, one brick at a time. They are building this structure back here, which is like a six apartment complex, all on one level. But in any case, and they're building it one brick at a time out of these bricks. They have made all these bricks, they're drying them, and then they'll continue building this structure right here. In any case, so they sell the bricks, and they also do construction. This is a fascinating thing. This picture right here, can anybody see what that says right there? It says Cybernet Limited. And this right here says computer accessories. One of the things that's true about Africa that's also true about America, how many here have a cell phone? How many here have a cell phone? If I asked that question among those 2,000 sitting in that auditorium that morning, how many of you have a cell phone? Guess how many would have raised their hands? All of them. All of them. It's like Harlem and the ghetto of Harlem, New York City. They may not be able to afford shoes, and they may live in a slum ghetto, but guess what? Every single one of them have a cell phone. And that's true in Nigeria as well. And they may live in a grass-roofed, dirt-floored hovel, but they got a cell phone. And those cell phones break. And it just turns out that it doesn't take any skill or technology or knowledge to know how to fix a phone, surprisingly enough. That for a very small investment, Sunset will be training men, and I'll be a part of making that happen. I won't be training anybody, but I'll be making it happen, that we'll be training students on how to repair cell phones. And to put a new screen on, or put the new hard drive in, or to repair the part where you plug in your phone to charge it. All those things break. And so these guys can make a living repairing cell phones over there. Because, again, they're poor people, and so they buy this cell phone, and then it breaks at some point in the future. They can't afford to buy another cell phone, so what do they have to do? Get it repaired. And that happens there. What do you do when your phone breaks? You just go buy a new one. Yeah, over there they repair them. So we're going to train these guys on how to do this. That was just another church that I preached at while I was there. This was an interesting thing. My vision of Africa is that you would drive through jungle and see all kinds of grass hut villages, and that was the whole population of Nigeria. That was in my head. Well, in fact, there are areas like that. We were driving down a country road, and I saw a lot of villages that were nothing more than thatched roof, little round hovels with dirt floors. And in fact, we drove into this one just to get permission to take some pictures. But as we drove down some of the highways, on one occasion we drove through an area that was cannibals. Those were not, but one area we drove through was cannibals, and in his true fashion, Prince told us about the fact that we were driving through cannibals, but guess when he told us? After we were, yeah, they don't like white bread. It was after we got through there. It was after we got through there that he said, oh, by the way, there's cannibals back there. But anyways, so this is more of those blockades, but one of the things I wanted to show you was this right here. This is a main city right here. And in this main city, that's what the streets looked like. It's just amazing. And you might also notice that the cars were not really driving any kind of a lane. They're just kind of driving wherever they want to. You'll see more of that. This was a restaurant I stopped at, one of the more fancy restaurants. And this right here, oh, where did it go? Pushed the button way too many times. There it is. So we stopped at this restaurant right here, and that right there was the kitchen stove on the ground. That was the food I ate, and that was actually pretty edible food. I actually ate that. It was a piece of chicken that I recognized and some rice. And so I ate that. That's one of the reasons why I didn't lose 20 pounds. So we arrived ultimately at a place called Ankpa. Ankpa, another one of the largest churches in Nigeria. It also has one of the larger schools. We were there. And by the way, almost all of my visits were not so much to villages and to churches or to preach like a missionary. My whole visit was about visiting schools and helping them to get up to speed for training their ministers to be bivocational. This was one of those places that we were at, Ankpa, and this is where I received, by the way, my pretty little hat right there. So if you need one of my hats, you can just go to Ankpa and they'll have one for you. This is again Prince Ugby, and this is just me preaching. And as I mentioned, most of the time I had an interpreter. Though guess what the primary language of Nigeria is? English. This is true of West Africa as well as South Africa. The English is the primary language. I mean, if you think about it, South Africa. What nation ruled South Africa up until a very short time ago? England did. And that's true also of all of West Africa, including Nigeria. And so everybody speaks English. But they do have three main languages that are not English. And the younger people don't necessarily speak English. All the older people do, but the younger people don't necessarily speak English. And so they had an interpreter for me for those people, especially the people that live out in the country. People that live in any of these big cities, they all speak English. Those that live in these small, tiny little villages, not so much. But anyway, so this is just me preaching and talking to them about what the needs of the future is for the schools and their preachers that they're training. Oh yeah, and this city right here, again, this is a major city that we're in, Akba, and this is just a city street. Can you tell that that's just mud? It's just a mud street. And I mean, there are stores. Look at that building right there. There's a 3 or 4 story building right there on a mud street. And you'll also notice that these motorcycles right here, they're not kind of like all going in the same direction. They're like this, going in between the traffic. Traffic's not all following itself. As you can see, these guys are like all over the place, as were we. And one of the reasons why was because of this. Those are very, very large ditches into which you could drop a car. And so we're traveling out that road. What? Oh yeah. That is a neat point. Some of the time I was talking to Brenda on the phone while we're driving, and she could hear the horns honking. Horns are honking nonstop. Everybody's honking their horn. And it's not because they're mad, it's just saying, hey, I'm here, don't hit me. And so as you're about to pass somebody, you honk your horn, and just whichever direction you're going. So horns were continually honking, which brings up one area of training that we might train our preacher students to do, is to repair car horns, because they're bound to wear those horns out. But in any case, so we arrived back at Obudu, and this school right here, Darrell Memorial, is one of the larger schools. It is the school that Prince Ugby that I told you about, that is the police captain or commander. He's the director of this school, and this right here is his graduating seniors that are gathered right there for us to speak to them about what their future looks like. The significance of this right here that you really can't tell what it is, that is an abandoned gas station with grass growing up around it. It was out a little ways, about a mile or so out of town, 2 miles out of the main city. A guy who was my predecessor there a few years ago, that was where he was ambushed and murdered by just a bunch of thugs, a bunch of bad people. And the guy that was that guy is named Darrell Fultz. And that's why it's called Darrell Memorial Bible Institute. It's named after him in his honor. He gave his life helping to establish that school. This is me preaching to the student body, actually, right here. This is the students, and the guys that are dressed up here a little bit fancier, those are the actual graduates. I think they graduated about, it was 18 or 20 in this graduating class with bachelor's degrees, and this was just a picture of me handing out their bachelor degree to them. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everything I've talked about just so far, including this graduation that's getting ready to happen here in these slides, 4 to 5.5 hours. Church services, 4 to 5.5 hours. In some cases, it was because there was more than one preacher, because I would preach, and Dan would preach, and maybe the local preacher would preach. And they'd sing like, 30 or 40 songs. And church services lasting 4 or 5 hours. One of the reasons also that happened is that when we first would start, there would be about half to maybe 2/3 of the people would be there at church, and over the next hour and a half, the other third or half would arrive. People just kept arriving. The numbers kept swelling, and that was fascinating to watch too. This was the actual group of seniors that we graduated at Obudu at Darrell Memorial, and I told you several weeks ago about a church called Bibi Church of Christ. It was established by the students at Obudu, at the Darrell Memorial College. They went to a town that would be like going from here to Mart, and the community was about the size of Mart. And they baptized 50 people in a 3-week period. Baptized 50 people, started the church, and built the church for their first church service by hand. That's their church building right there. They built every brick. They made the bricks and built the church. The first church service, I think they said the first church service they actually met was in that building right there, and which is obviously now already erected. But it was just a fascinating story. But that's what that says, is Bibi Church of Christ. This is back on the campus of Darrell Memorial. This is where I stayed at while I was there. The dormitories were like over here, but this area back here, it was school dormitories. These are classrooms. There's 2 floors of classrooms and that sort of thing. And so this is kind of the campus of that school. We had baptisms while I preached there, and this is one of those baptisms. This is another one of the marvelous foods they fed me. This one right here was goat intestines. It just looked like hot dogs with nothing in them. You know what I'm saying? They were empty tubes, sliced up into about 1-inch pieces, and they were as chewy as rubber. Tasted kind of gnarly, but yeah, I don't know if I have pictures of that here or not. No, I don't. I didn't put those pictures up here. That was a dumb moment, wasn't it? So while I was at Obudu, no, not at Obudu, at Calabar, we were invited by his title is commissioner, but what he was kind of like a member of the cabinet of the governor. It was the governor's cabinet, and he's a member of the church, a gospel preacher that preached prior to ascending through the political ranks. And at this point in time, one of the most powerful men in the state of Cross River, and we were invited to his palace for a meal, and that was just kind of a cool experience, but yeah, is that what you're talking about? Yeah. And I didn't put that picture in here, but yeah, we did that too. We traveled from there back to Calabar, and this is in Calabar itself. The school in Calabar is having their 3rd graduation associated with Sunset, and this guy right here is the director of that school. That's Dan right there preaching to them and telling them about how that the church needs to step up and start supporting their preachers. One of the things that goes on there is that they're very poor people, very poor people. And so for them, being able to give large amounts of money is just not possible. And so one of the things that Dan suggested, and I'm going to bring it up in my sermon, so I don't want to go down that road because I'm going to bring it up in my sermon. You're going to get more of this during my sermon this morning. But he just basically was telling them they need to step up and start supporting their preachers. That's me right there. That's the director of the school, and that's Dan. This was the church where I preached at that day, and there were, again, about 1,000 or so people there. This is the graduating class of that school, and they had about 30 that were receiving their bachelor's degree in ministry. This was a meal they fed us afterwards, and around the table are various school administrators that were there for this graduation, not just from that school, but from other schools. And so they were there, but this guy right here is the director. That's this guy right here. This guy right here is the president of the college. So he was there at the dinner table with us right here, and he took off his coat, and I noticed through his shirt that I could see some print underneath of his fancy white shirt. I asked him, his name was Nelson Akba. I said, Nelson, would you unbutton your shirt for just a second? And he unbuttoned his shirt, and can you see what that says? I'm telling you, they love Texas even in Nigeria. So anyways, this is another one of those meals where I didn't recognize the food. You might recognize that. Anybody know what that is? It's a chicken leg. That was a chicken leg. Felt like shoe leather, but it was chicken. And some other food I ate. That stuff right there, that was nasty. That was stuff called poo. It was called poo, and it... No pun intended. That is what it was called, but it's made out of maize and some other stuff, and it had the consistency of pudding, but not the taste. That is just a picture of the graduating class, and a bunch of these guys are faculty members back there from the school. And that's my pretty face yet one more time. I've got maybe 2 minutes. Did everybody get one of these? Go ahead and hand those out real quick. I'll just talk about this in the last few seconds. And if you have any questions, you feel free to ask me a question.
No pork.
Huh?
No pork.
No pork. Yeah, I had some pork, but no pork chops. If I had pork, it was other parts of the pork that you wouldn't really want to eat. No ribs. Yeah, beef. I ate beef one time and was shocked, but I had a beef stew one time. Well, first of all, Nigeria is like the size of Alabama. It's a big state, big nation. Yeah. Actually, I'm intending for one bill per family. So if you got 2 bills, you got too many. 1 bill per family. That way they'll spread out. Because I only gave about, what I'm handing to you is about 40,000 naira. Everybody see what it says on this bill? It says 1,000. It's 1,000 naira is what this is. 1,000 sounds like a lot, okay? But you pay 400 to 500 naira per dollar. So 1,000 naira is worth about what, you mathematicians? Yeah, about $2.35. That's what this is worth. This is about $2 right here. Yes? No. First of all, I'll die because I'll keep losing weight until I'm nothing. But, yes. Oh. Yeah, very spicy. Very spicy. You had to ask for it to not be spicy. Oh. Yeah, by the way, this is my shoe. It just fell off. But that's also typical church clothing. Any other questions? Yes. Now I'm going to learn how to eat this Nigerian food if I go again. Which, by the way, the main thing I ate that I got away with eating as much as I could have, and anytime it was in front of me, I ate all of it I could get, was rice or beans. They put rice and beans in front of me at various points, and I ate as much as I could of that. So, And eggs, yeah. Eggs was something too. And I ate eggs in the morning or eggs in the evening. No salt and pepper. There wasn't any salt. But they did have like crushed red pepper and other kinds of peppers. Somebody had a hand up over here. Yes?
You said that this prince that you were writing about, his name was Prince Ugly?
That's a common name, Prince. He wasn't like the son of a king.
Well, I get several emails from princes who are trying to get money out of Nigeria, but it's done by
Yeah, right. But no, Prince is a common name like John. They also call themselves by days of the week. I got confused at the number of Sundays, Mondays, and Fridays that I met.
You also mentioned that the meal that you couldn't eat smelled and tasted like cattle in here, and I'm curious when you have eaten cattle.
That's a good question. Have you ever smelled cow manure? Well, there you go. Yes, Shauna. What did I what? Oh, drink bottled water and bottled water only. You don't drink the water there. It's a good way to come down with cholera or typhoid. There was a whole list of, I got a whole barrage of vaccines. I spent nearly $1,000 on vaccines before I left. In the weeks leading up to the end of July, in the middle of July, I was getting vaccines at regular intervals, and it was for typhoid and cholera and yellow fever. Yellow fever you had to have a vaccine for, they wouldn't let you in the country. Ceremony? Yeah. Oh, only bottled water. That's all we drank, bottled water. Yeah. And that's all they drink, too, for that matter. They were drinking bottled water also. Yes, tea and coffee and lots of it. But guess what water was used to make it? Bottled water. Yeah, on back. Gloria, you had a question? Gloria? How involved is the federal government in the curriculum? Well, there are two kinds of schools there as far as, other than the preacher training colleges and stuff. As far as for secondary education, they had public schools that were totally government operated. It was a public schools, just like here. And most people couldn't afford to go to them. And that was government operated. And then there were private schools that only rich people could afford. And that's kind of like here too, I guess. Any other questions? Where did I get this from? I exchanged some American dollars for Nigerian naira so that I would be able to pay for things like meals and things like that. Oh yeah, I gave all kinds of people money just so they would be nice. If anybody shoved their hand out, I handed them a naira, 1,000 naira. Yes, Brody. Yeah, tipping is what we're talking about here. Or bribes. Tipping or bribes, either one. Yeah, a lot of it. Oh, yeah, I was at the airport trying to fly out of Lagos to come back home, and I went through so many different security points, and only half of them were actual legitimate security points. You have to go through immigration, you got to go through customs, you got to go through all these official checkpoints, and I kept coming up to these spots where there's a guy sitting there on a chair, and he says, "Let me see your passport." And he's official, and so I handed him my passport. And then he'd say, "Do you have something for me?" "Yes, sir, I do. Here's 1,000 naira. Appreciate your attention. Let's prepare for worship.